Hello, everyone. My name is Ann Esty from the Path to Purchase Institute. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this webcast seminar. Today's webcast is brought to you by RevTrax on the topic of behavioral economics and how marketers can leverage behavioral economics to identify triggers that drive consumer behavior along the path to purchase. We have two presenters joining us today, Gandhi, VP of Data Science at RevTrax, and Jura Liaukonyte, M.A. Ph.D., who teaches strategic pricing and economics of advertising at Cornell University. We will have time at the end of the event for your questions. You can use the Q&A function on the left side of your screen below the presenter headshots to ask questions throughout the webinar. I'll hold these questions until the conclusion of the presentation and then pose them on your behalf. You can also use this section if you have any technical questions about the webinar itself, and you will get a direct reply from our webinar producer. At the end of the event, there will be a webcast evaluation survey. We encourage you to provide feedback using this feature. Okay, well that's it for housekeeping. We're ready to start now. I will turn the floor over to Neil and Jura to get started.
Hello everybody, this is Jura Liaukonyte and I'm a professor at Cornell University, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about behavioral economics. So what are we going to do today? I hope to cover the following two things. First, I'm going to talk about what is behavioral economics and why is it important for business. Then I'm going to cover 4 mini cases on behavioral biases and some of the experiments that we ran with RevTrax to uncover them. And then I'm going to hand off to Neil, and he's going to talk to you about how can RevTrax help with behavioral testing. So let's start with the simple question. What is behavioral economics? You can think of behavioral economics as laying somewhere at the intersection of psychology and economics, and essentially being a branch of economics that integrates psychological factors into traditional models of economic decision-making. Traditional economics as a discipline is incredibly powerful because it helps us to make predictions about important concepts such as market prices, cost, and resource allocation. But behavioral economics takes everything that traditional economics has to offer and then injects more complexity and realism into the existing traditional models. So in other words, in a sense, behavioral economics is even more powerful because it retains the formalization of economics while at the same time enriching it with insights from other disciplines such as psychology, which allow it to make better predictions about real-world behavior. So the bottom line is that people aren't perfectly rational, but at the same time, people aren't completely irrational as well. As some behavioral economists say, people tend to be predictably rational. When I teach behavioral economics, I tend to say that behavioral economics is about rationalizing the irrational. Behavioral economics essentially identifies and quantifies the impact of non-monetary, social, psychological, and emotional factors that often overrule strictly logical decision-making. So if you can think about a continuum axis where on one end you have a super calculated, logical, rational individual, such as Spock from Star Trek, and on the other end of the continuum you have Homer Simpson, traditional economists would want you to believe that all people are like Spock, right? Whereas, and we think this is pretty unrealistic, whereas behavioral economists would argue that most people fall somewhere between the extremes of Spock and Homer. So some people are closer to Spock, some people are closer to Homer, some people are like Homer, right? But really all of us fall somewhere in between the two extremes. Behavioral economics has certainly reached the mainstream media. We see the proliferation of very popular bestsellers. I have some shots of the very popular books that are out there about behavioral economics. And media covers developing research in academia and in the business world and in the government nearly every week. However, and I want to emphasize this, it is tougher to find firms who have really profited or succeeded by applying these concepts. And in my opinion, the gap between theory and application still remains wide. So let's talk a little bit about why is it important to understand behavioral economics for business. Understanding behavioral economics can really be an incredibly valuable tool set for shaping the behaviors of consumers. What we are really doing is that we are trying to uncover non-monetary factors that might help marketers understand consumers better and influence consumer purchase behavior that in the end might ultimately improve ROI on a wide variety of marketing efforts. Insights from behavioral economics can inform the construction of what we call in behavioral economics of choice architectures, and they can be used to create powerful incentives for consumers to act in particular ways. So really, we are not forcing consumers to behave one way or another. We're really setting up some nudges where the consumers then choose to behave one way or another that are consistent with our parameters. So many of the tools of behavioral economics have been in practice for a while now, but only recently we have started applying rigorous statistical techniques to causally identify the impact of these tools. And I think RevTrax is definitely set up to be able to do this rigorously and effectively. Behavioral economics really can be applied and used in all aspects of consumer experience. So what we'll do today is we're going to focus on 4 mini cases of the experiments that we ran on RevTrax platform that were informed and inspired by behavioral economics and that have yielded interesting and insightful results. We are going to talk about 4 behavioral biases: mental accounting, anchoring, scarcity, and bundle framing. We have run a bunch of experiments, maybe in the neighborhood of 20 experiments with RevTrax testing various behavioral theories, and we've been very successful, but due to the time limitations, we're going to focus only on these 4 for now. So how is this going to work? First, I will introduce a behavioral anomaly, or so to speak, behavioral bias, which is something that a traditional economist would call irrational behavior. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. I'm going to talk about why it is considered to be a behavioral bias. And then I'm going to talk about some classical studies that show the existence of these biases. And finally, I will describe how we tested that specific behavioral bias on the RevTrax platform and then share some of the general findings. Hopefully these examples can help you understand a little bit more about the factors that motivate consumers. But one thing that I want you to note is that some of these examples will be specific to a particular industry and category setting that we are studying. But in my opinion, some overarching actionable insights still should be become apparent to you. Okay, so let's start. Let's start talking about case 1, which is essentially the behavioral bias that we will call mental accounting. Okay, so what is mental accounting? In behavioral economics, we say that mental accounting is a term that describes people's proclivity to divide up their money into separate mental accounts based on certain criteria. So these are not actual physical bank accounts, these are mental accounts. If you think about Homer Simpson, a huge, big mental account for him is going to be dedicated to donuts, right? This term was first coined by behavioral economist Richard Thaler, and this was in an attempt to explain his discovery that propensity to consume differs between separate mental accounts. Let's with a quick example to illustrate this. So I want you all to imagine that you have set aside $5 each day for your lunch. And each day you're going to your favorite hot dog stand and you are buying the hot dog. Okay, so I'm going to discuss two scenarios now. In scenario one, let's say you get to the stand and you discover that because of a hole in your pocket, you discover a hole and you realize that you have lost exactly $5. However, you also know that you still have enough money left in your wallet to buy the hot dog. So I want you to sort of answer to yourself, do you still buy the hot dog? Think about it, yes or no. Okay, and remember that. And then let's do a scenario number two. And this time, you didn't lose any money before arriving at the hot dog stand. So you buy a hot dog, but as you're walking back to your office, before you have taken even one bite, what happens? You drop it on the ground. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So the question is, do you go back and buy another hot dog? All right, so I want you to think about whether you answer this question yes or no. Okay? So it turns out that significantly more people, and this is consistent throughout, and I just did the survey with my students recently, it's time after time, significantly more people answer yes to scenario one relative to scenario two. But what I want to emphasize is that economically speaking, the scenarios that are presented in both the scenarios that are presented in both of these examples are economically identical. Essentially, you have lost $5, right? But in the first question, most people do not see the lost $5 as coming from the lunch account. So in a sense, they feel comfortable still making a withdrawal from that account. Whereas in the second question, most people perceive the lost hot dog as a $5 loss from their lunch account, and they are significantly less comfortable to make another withdrawal from that account. I don't know how it was with in your cases, but this definitely, these patterns play out time after time, as I mentioned. So let's talk a little bit, how can this phenomenon be applied to a business situation? I'm going to tell you about a quick test that we did on RevTrax platform. So in RevTrax, we have a platform where we can manipulate the contents of the offers for the consumers, and we tested online coupons that originally contained a simple phrase such as save $2. So we divided consumers into groups randomly, and for the control set of the consumers, we served a message that the traditional message that said save $2, versus for the treatment group, we randomly served them an offer that said save $2 for your family. It was very interesting to see the incoming results, and in our case, for our product and for our product category, save $2 for your family outperformed significantly the simple save $2 message. In other words, we saw significant gains in coupon printing and redemptions with these added phrases. So the question that we want to then answer, why did this happen? So we took this finding and we tried to do follow-up tests and follow-up surveys to understand exactly what is happening. And what we found out in additional tests, that participants really felt that the money saved was contributing for their family. In a sense, we were telling them, save these $2 for your family. This will enable you to spend those $2 or something else for your family. And this was a different mental account for them than money for their personal use or money for any other use. So this is a prime example of how businesses can target the correct mental account of your customers and then see significant improvements. Remember, this from the traditional economics perspective, here we have two identical scenarios. In a sense, the traditional economics says that only monetary incentives matter, right? The price matters. The price moves the demand. But here, this would be an anomaly for traditional economists. But behavioral economists think that economists think that people are boundedly rational, and this is a prime example of how just adding 3 additional words, right, to a saving message has improved the measured outcomes. Okay, the second case that I want to talk to you about is going to be anchoring. So remember, as I discussed before, behavioral economics assumes that people are boundedly rational actors, and they have limited cognitive processing power and time, and the choices of these individuals are influenced, all of us, right, by the context in which decisions are embedded. So the perception of an attribute is often reference dependent, and what I'm trying to say here is that our judgment about the attribute depends on the context. And here I have an example where I'm trying to illustrate the context dependency. So if I were to ask you which dark ball is larger, your brain, if your brain is like mine, and I think most of our brains are in this way similar, your brain is telling you that the dark black ball circle on the left is significantly larger than the one on the right, right? So really what is making our brain to make this determination is the shortcut, right? The shortcut, the heuristic is sort of the information that is around it. But if I were to tell you that these, so now I'm measuring the diameter in the slides with red lines, and if I were to tell you that these red lines are exactly the same, you would probably be very surprised. But in fact, they are really the same. And I don't know if I can play it out here to illustrate it that they are indeed the same. Yes, we can. Here, we have a little bit of animation doing that. Okay, so they are indeed the same. So the point that I wanted to make is that brain kind of tricks us into thinking that one thing is bigger than another, and that inference is very much context dependent. The other and this is really a strong physiological reaction. Here we are not even talking about consumer behavior. The second example I'm going to show you is this picture with the 2 rocking horses. So your brain is immediately jumping to make a decision. Sorry, here it is. So your brain is immediately jumping to make a decision about which horse is bigger in the real life, and you're relying on the perspective to make that inference. But what I want to ask you is, what are the sizes of the 2 horses in this picture as they are shown in the picture? In other words, I'm asking you to abstract away from the 3D, from 3 dimensions, and judge these horses in a 2-dimensional size, how they appear in the picture. And I want to ask you, which one do you think is bigger? Okay? So in most likelihood, if your brain is like mine, you are certainly thinking, your brain makes you think that the horse further away is significantly bigger, right? And your thinking is likely based on impression of the 3-dimensional size. Believe it or not, the images are in fact identical in size, and we again can have an animation to illustrate that. And but the image produces this compelling illusion that the horse that is higher up is definitely significantly higher. So what our brain is doing is immediately judging the three-dimensional size of the horse and using the perspective as a heuristic, as a context-dependent attribute. And some of the people online are probably still not convinced. I teach this all the time, and I have students in the audience who are still not convinced that the horse higher up is actually of the same size in 2D as the horse lower. So what I ask my students to do is to come up to the board with a ruler and measure to the projector with the ruler and measure them themselves. And that's when they actually figure out that that is indeed the case. Okay, so why am I talking about this, right? We are talking about consumer behavior. So what does this mean for marketing? Most people don't know what they want unless they see it in context. Let me repeat it again. Most people don't know what they want unless they see it in context. We see this over and over and over again. So let me introduce to you the behavioral bias that we call anchoring or anchoring bias, which is a psychological behavioral economics term that refers to the cognitive bias where an individual anchors, so to speak, their response towards the first information they're presented with or towards some context information they're presented with, even if that information is completely irrelevant. In other words, anchoring describes the common human tendency that all of us have to rely too heavily on the first piece of information that is called the anchor in behavioral economics. So in one of the first studies in anchoring, researchers Tversky and Kahneman gave subjects 5 seconds to calculate the product of numbers 1 through 8. But what they did is that they randomized their subjects into 2 groups, and for one group they showed the equation on the left, and for the other group they showed the equation on the right. And then they asked them, spend 5 seconds and then write down what do you think is the actual number. So one thing that happened is that the differences were stark. And I do this experiment all the time with my students, and this happens over and over. The group that had the equation on the left, starting with 1, 2, 3, and so on, did a quick estimate that this equation is equal to 512. And the group who had the equation on the right, that starts with 8, 7, 6, and so on, did a quick estimate and wrote that it's 2,200, 500. Really, these are, as you can see, if you know a little bit of math, these are identical equations. This is 8 factorial. And in fact, both of them were way off. The correct answer is over 40,000. But the idea here is that these groups were really influenced by the anchor of the first numbers that they saw in the list. So that's one example, classical example of anchoring bias. The second example that I'm going to cover is also very, very well known. This happened at MIT with MBA students, and MIT professors essentially offered to sell various valuable consumer products, but the products that students didn't really know what were the exact prices of them. So there were computer accessories, wine bottles, luxury chocolates, and so on. And then students were asked to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number. And then they were asked, and as we know, this should be a pretty random distribution across the students. And then they were asked whether they would buy each good for the dollar figure equal to these 2 last digits of their social security number. And then, after giving a yes or no response, the subjects were asked to state the most they would pay for these items. And the results were pretty startling. Okay, so the results showed that those with high social security numbers were willing to pay significantly more for the products across the board. Doesn't matter what the products were. And more than that, the valuations of subjects with the top 20% of the social security numbers were typically greater by a factor of 3. Okay? So for example, subjects with social security numbers in the top 20% were willing to pay $56 on average for a cordless computer keyboard, compared with $16 on average for subjects with the bottom 20% of the social security numbers. For wine, the numbers are 8 and 27 and 11 and 37. So this is consistent across all the products. Again, from the rational traditional economics perspective, this is completely irrational behavior. But here we see that the values that they were provided were really anchored to their social security number, which is essentially a random figure. And this is happening because these consumers, these students did not have or were not able to retrieve personal values for ordinary products. One other example before we jump into the examples with RevTrax that I want to cover, which is also a standard case of what not to do, is disregard the anchoring bias. So in 2011, JCPenney always had this very aggressive marked up original price and discount of 30%, 40%, 50% off tags on their clothes. And then in 2011, they had a new CEO who came from Apple, and he essentially said, let's cut this crap out. Let's just reduce all the prices by 40%. Okay, so the policy eliminated the anchor of the full price item. And even though the prices were lower, the customers did not have a reference price to compare the prices to. So really there was no hype around these products. And we can see that this wasn't very good for JCPenney. There was steep declines. I mean, most of it, scholars attribute most of it to this pricing policy. There might have been other factors that were going on, but they really saw these steep declines in sales all around the country, and shareholders began to sell their stocks. So new policy, really what they did is they took away consumers' feeling of small achievement when they got rid of deals. And JCPenney realized and said, come back to us. We're going to be different this time. Okay, so let's talk about what we did on the RevTrax platform. So on the RevTrax, I'm going to talk about two examples of anchoring that we tested. So first, in the experiment, imagine a web page. You open a web page and there are a bunch of coupons or offers. And what we did is that we took the first row of coupons and then we randomized the value of the offers in the first row. And they were either consumers were randomized into low or high group. And then what we did is that we kept the follower offer coupons constant for both groups. And what we found is pretty amazing. We found that this framing significantly increased the printing and redemptions of the follower offers if you were in the high group. So essentially, when you had lead offers that were very valuable, what happened is that you then made a perception that inference that the follower coupons, and remember, the values of the follower coupons are kept constant, but you incorrectly made an inference that these coupons were more valuable, and we saw engagement rates significantly increase, really significantly increase as a result of that. And we also saw that people spent more time exploring the coupons, so they were motivated to see what the rest of the offers are. And you can see the underlying implications of this experiment very easily. The second anchoring experiment that I'm going to briefly discuss is where we actually inserted an anchoring message for consumers. We randomized the consumers into 4 groups. The control just saw a simple a simple message that says you can print coupons and save money. And then the other 3 groups saw a message that had dollar amounts, and we saw a clear evidence that the anchoring messages relative to control perform much better, especially the last one with the highest dollar amount. Okay, now we are going to go on the case number 3, which is scarcity. So let me talk a little bit about scarcity from the behavioral economics perspective, and then I'm going to tell you what we did with RevTrax. So scarcity is a heuristic, or in other words, decision-making tool in which people are more likely to perceive an item as having a greater value if it is scarce. And there are 2 types in behavioral economics we classify them of scarcity appeals. Ones that are driven by low supply, and then those that are driven by high demand. So to the right, we have an example of a low scarcity appeal. So this is appeal to people who value uniqueness. So they value the product more if there's fewer of the items that are available out there. On the other hand, the high demand appeals typically involve phrases like almost sold out and while supplies last. And these types of appeals typically appeal to people who value group conformity. So really a person's thinking, it's almost sold out. It must be a good thing. It must be a good product. I'm going to buy it. One of the examples to show this appeal is a well-known experiment that illustrated the importance of scarcity in the marketing world. So the item in question here was wristwatches, and the researchers exposed subjects to 2 different ads for a new watch. And again, from the traditional economics perspective, this is identical watch. You can see it. It's available for you to buy in front of you. So traditional economists would really say this is an irrational, illogical behavior. So for one group, saw an ad that says exclusive limited edition, hurry limited stocks, and the other ad said new edition, many items in stock. And the findings of the study were very significant, and it said that there was a 50% increase in the amount consumers were willing to pay for the exclusive watch compared to the new edition. And again, traditional economics, this is completely irrational. Behavioral economics, we are acting with some sort of social cues that are embedded in these ads. Okay, so what did we do? Okay, so we conducted a series of experiments where we tested the effects of different scarcity suggesting messages on coupon printing and redemption. So we always had a control, and then we had the following messages such as act now, limited time only, while supplies last, grab it now, maximum 2 prints per coupon, don't miss out. So first thing that we found, which is very important, they always statistically significantly outperformed the control. The second thing that we found that how effective these messages were relative to each other, and we found that limited time only, at least in our case and in our setting, limited time only and don't miss out were the most significant effects in increasing printing and redemption rates. Okay, and then the last thing, fourth case that I want to cover is bundle framing. And bundle framing, bundling is pretty much a familiar tool to many businesses, and it is typically used to encourage sales of products in a way that is profitable for businesses, but at the same time beneficial to the consumer because it simplifies choice. Bundle framing deals with the way that bundled offers are presented and what are the particular combinations of stimuli that most encourage the customer to purchase the bundled products. And framing is an important tool in behavioral economics for understanding consumer behavior, and it can be used effectively with offer bundling to produce significant results, as I will show you with the experiments that we did. Okay, so what do we know from the sort of the theory and the academic work about bundles? So there's a pretty famous Columbia Business School study that tells us that, first of all, when bundles are composed of complementary products, meaning that you tend to consume those products together, people are more likely to buy them. Also, the study showed that the way you present the price of the bundle matters a lot in terms of stimulating purchasing. And also, people who are more familiar with products inside the bundle tend to respond differently to framing than people who are less familiar with said products. So with all of these results, it's no surprise that it's really a useful type of research for marketing, but I really haven't seen much of this being applied in the practitioner world. So what we did was the following. So here we are testing, again, dividing consumers into three groups. And essentially, from the monetary perspective, again, traditional economics, from the monetary perspective, all of these offers are identical because all of these offers are requiring you to buy product 1 and product 2 and get X dollars off. Okay, and the X dollars is going to be, let's say $3, right, for the sake of this example. So in the first example, in the first group, we said buy product 1, get $3 off product 2. In the for the second group, we flipped it. We said buy product 2, get $3 off product 1. And the third group, we said get $3 off when you purchase both of these products. Again, from the manufacturer's, vendor's perspective, these offers are identical. They are offering $3 off when you buy product 1 and product 2. However, we saw drastic changes, drastic differences in terms of the reaction of the consumers to these simple framings. So first thing that we found is the one we marked with a yellow star, where we found that this is definitely the winner by a lot, by like orders of magnitude more engagement with this offer, and it said buy product 1, get $3 off product 2. And in this case, product 1 is the more popular of the products. It's the product that people tend to buy more often. So when you are making a bundle framing, we found that when you say buy product, which you're already probably buying anyways, and then get $3 off the other product, this is going to be the most successful framing relative to the other framings. And again, I'm coming back to the same point. From the traditional economics perspective, these offers are identical. So for me, it was, I expected differences, but I didn't expect the magnitude of the differences that we saw. And the last example that I'm going to cover is the bundle with the bundle framing is whether bundled offers are complements or substitutes for the standalone offers. So here, what we did is that we again divided consumers into three random groups, and for one group, we served standalone coupons and a bundle coupon. And then for the second group, we served only standalone coupons. And for the third group, we served only bundle coupon. So this was a really major surprise to me because what I learned from this experiment was that really it doesn't hurt to add a bundle to the standalone offers. So first of all, not only that the total engagement with the products has increased substantially, but also we didn't see decreases of the engagement with the standalone coupons. So this was a big surprise to me. I thought that there's going to be a steal effect, cannibalization effect when you add a bundle. We did not find it, at least in our setting. So really adding this bundle coupon was just like a gravy on top. And again, this might be specific to our setting. So then we thought maybe this is happening because of the certain two products that we are bundling, or the two offers that we are bundling. So then we said, let's try with other bundles. And then we saw, and there we varied how complementary the products are in that bundled offer. And here we also found that the same patterns held throughout, which was again surprising. The pattern was the same, the magnitude differed depending on the complementarity, which was similar to the prediction in the paper that I discussed, where more complementary products tend to increase the bundle engagement. Okay, so that is it for me. And now I'm going to hand off to Neil, who's going to talk to you a little bit about this awesome platform that I've been talking about, RevTrax. Okay, Neil.
Jura, well, thanks so much, Jura. And first of all, thank you to the Path to Purchase Institute for inviting us to speak. I've joined a number of these learning sessions, and we're thrilled to have this opportunity. And thanks to everybody who took time out of their busy day to join. We really do hope you learned something. And what I wanted to create the linkage between is, why is RevTrax in a unique position to drive meaningful ROI with testing? So first, just some background on the company. It was founded in 2008, and the founding vision of the company was really all about connecting online shopper behavior to actual in-store sales. Broadly, it was to enable marketers to do more with less through data and personalization. And to this end, at the company's core is a proprietary digital offer serving platform that allows precisely for that. In fact, we have a robust solution set. If you're interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out. My contact info will be provided by the Institute. But today, I want to specifically focus on how RevTrax's proprietary technology and approach allow us to perform behavioral economics experiments for our clients in a uniquely rigorous way. And as far as our clients, we work with hundreds of CPG brands and retailers to, amongst other things, power offers on any digital channel. Their own brand sites, offer portals, through email, social, SMS, and so on. When we serve up offers for clients, central to their goals is driving incremental units sold, naturally. But equally important is that our platform allows for an understanding of path to purchase from the time when shoppers interact with RevTrax powered offers through actual purchase, be it in-store or online. So firstly, how does RevTrax identify or define a shopper? What we do is we create an online fingerprint based on browser and device attributes the first time a shopper interacts with any RevTrax powered offer in any channel. Subsequently, this unique shopper ID remains constant, so we capture future behavior of that same shopper. So RevTrax's visibility into path to purchase starts when a shopper views an offer. Since the shopper has to at least click on an offer for us to consider it a view, we consider this to demonstrate purchase intent. Moving further along, if the shopper then prints a digital offer or loads to retailer loyalty card, we consider that an activation. And our platform actually captures shopper views and activations in real time. Further along to path to purchase, we know whether the offer was redeemed through our direct relationships with clearinghouses. This is considered a purchase. And since the online fingerprint we create to define a shopper stays constant over time, we will have visibility into future behavior of that same shopper across future paths to purchase as they interact with any RevTrax powered offer across product categories through any digital channel. And our ability to capture first-party purchase data is what allows us to tie specific marketing messages and constructs, just like what Jura shared, linking those messages to actual purchase at an individual or audience level. But first, let me just level set. What's the difference between first, second, and third-party data? So third-party data is not owned by the organization. So for example, This can be demographic information like marital status that an organization sources from a vendor. Second-party data is what is typically shared between partner organizations, say data a client shares with you. First-party data is data that is owned by the organization. This can even be PII, personally identifiable information. For example, email addresses for an in-house CRM. And then there's first-party purchase data. This is data that an organization owns and has actual, not modeled, but actual purchase data. And this is what our platform allows us to see. So we have relationships with clearinghouses, so we receive actual redemption data that can be tied to specific shoppers and audiences. This is our first-party purchase level data. Here's an illustrative sample of our data. So we have visibility into actual purchase at a shopper level, and we have visibility into the retailers where the purchase happened. And if it's, let's say, a search campaign or a display campaign, for example, we'll actually get relevant parameters passed to us as well, giving us more information on that path to purchase. So what allows RevTrax to uniquely provide a behavioral economics testing solution? So all those great things that Jura was talking about, why is RevTrax in a unique position to deliver on that? Well, it starts with our platform's ability to capture first-party purchase data through serving up variations of the same offer. We have in-house proprietary offer-serving technology. Further, traditional methods to understand consumer psychology are typically focus groups, surveys, panels. And the drawback of these approaches, and they do have their merits, is that the test participants know that they're being observed. And this creates risk that they will behave differently than they would if they didn't know that they were being observed. And so what RevTrax's platform allows for is silent observation in a live offer environment. And in real time, we can begin to understand a shopper's path to purchase. And further, our experiment design is done through what's called multivariate testing as opposed to A/B testing. So some of you may be familiar with A/B testing. Really what you're looking at is an offer's effectiveness in totality, while multivariate tests allow for an understanding of the impact of individual offer elements. So really letting you get to that granular level. So it's the combination of the platform's capabilities along with the proper analytical rigor that allows us to understand the impact of, say, a specific scarcity message on shoppers to actual purchase on an individual and audience level. So in summary, you've heard from Jura about foundational behavioral economics constructs and some case studies we ran. And then I discussed how RevTrax's technology enables behavioral economics testing to actually derive meaningful, actionable, scalable results. And RevTrax provides an ideal behavioral economics testing environment for a few reasons. One, as I mentioned, it's our in-house offer-serving capability of numerous offer variations in a live environment, let's say such as a coupon portal, versus a simulated environment. Rigorous multivariate testing versus simple A/B tests. First-party purchase data to tie granular insights to actual purchase versus making broader inferences with non-purchase data, and the ability to observe behaviors silently to most accurately understand shopper psychology. So that's kind of at a high level why RevTrax is able to uniquely support BE testing effectively. Just given time, I didn't get into what the process would be to execute a test and other tactical details. I'm happy to discuss one-on-one. Again, my contact info will be provided by the Institute and is going to be on the next slide. So please feel free to reach out with any questions or comments. Thanks so much, and we'd love to be able to open up the floor to questions for the last 10 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much, Neil and Jura. That was a great presentation. So right now we'd like to begin the Q&A portion of the webcast. So please remember to submit your questions using the Q&A feature on the left side of your screen. Also, if we do run out of time before getting to your questions, one of the presenters will get back to you privately with a response. So we have a question here. The first question I think is targeted toward Neil, if you could answer this. It's referring to case number 1, the mental accounting. What was the targeting on that piece?
I don't know if I quite follow the question. Let me...
I think, Neil, if I can jump in, I think if I understand it correctly, whether there was any targeting happening, and my answer is that this test was run essentially on every consumer who came to the platform one way or another, and typically these are already highly motivated consumers to seek deals. That is my understanding of the question.
Yes. Okay. Now I do follow the question. Yes. So there was no. There is specific targeting that we can do, and test specific audiences. Just think of this as kind of a broader, more generalized example. But we do have that capability.
Okay. I'm not sure if this will come across exactly. The next question says, does the response on this one change when the targeting is altered? So do boomer value seekers have a higher response versus millennials?
Yes, so I think this is a very similar question. There was not necessarily a targeting made, but we can look at the covariates because we know a little bit about the customers, and I think that from what I remember, and I don't have it on top of my head, there is some heterogeneity in terms of the demographic responses, and I do remember that these responses tend to be higher for the older population.
Okay, thank you. The next question, was this test run on mobile tablets, and desktop, or any variation of these? Did consumers have to print these coupons, or could they redeem them from their phone?
Neil, do you want to take that?
Yeah, let me jump in here. It's really across channels and devices. So the way our technology works is we can iframe our promotion serving link, if you will, into any digital channel. And typically, the key offer formats that the end shoppers use to date are digital printed home coupons, loyalty, as well as clipping to loyalty card. We're also exploring a number of different offer formats as well. So watch this space. Thank you for that question.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here. This might be the last question outside of the comment that it's a great webinar. In the example of anchoring, writing down the social security number wouldn't be considered as some kind of printing, self-printing, or priming, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can take this question. It's a great question. Somebody who has definitely has done some reading on behavioral economics, and the answer is very simple. These terms are pretty interchangeable: anchoring, priming, reference-dependent preferences. I think they change depending on what discipline you go. Economists might use one, psychologists might use other, and then there's another term that would be more used in the business world. So I would say priming is used typically more in the business world, and anchoring and reference-dependent preferences tend to be used a little bit more in academia. Thank you. Very great question.
Okay, great. That looks like all the questions we have for today. Again, thank you, Neil and Jura. It was a really great presentation. I just want to remind everybody to fill out the evaluation survey that will automatically appear on your screen at the conclusion of the event. We really would love your feedback. And again, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hosting you again at a future webinar. Everyone have a great afternoon, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, everybody.